This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Ever wondered how you could turn your side hustle into a full-time gig and spend more time together?
Hi, I'm Vikki, a #1 best-selling author.
And I'm John, a retired Los Angeles police officer. Welcome to Dig the Well, where we help couples navigate the world of business.
We've been married for 35 years, and because we built a successful side business, John retired 9 years earlier than he originally planned from the Los Angeles Police Department after 25 years on the job. Now we spend more time together, and we want to help couples like you do the same.
Join us as we help you overcome common obstacles, and we show you how to make extra income without sacrificing family time.
Ready to dig deep and build your well? Let's get started. Hello, 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 and welcome to Dig the Well. And if you're listening to this when our podcast drops on every Thursday, and it is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we're really thrilled to be here with you. I'm trying to use a different word outside of excited. Because you know me, I'm always so excited. But we have done some research on Thanksgiving and wanted to relate it to entrepreneurship. And we were chatting about the Pilgrims and how when they came to and established their colony here in America, that, actually my question to John was, were they entrepreneurs before they came? Did they become entrepreneurs when they got here? So we've done some research and we're going to dive into that.
Yeah, I think maybe the common, I don't know, at least I was always taught that they were escaping religious persecution. And that was more of a religious thing that they were traveling for. And that was a part of it.
Right.
But it was economic. It was
right.
a big driver of them coming over here to settle.
Yeah. And honestly, this is kind of funny for all the Gen Xers out there. I always remembered escaping taxation, that the colonists were leaving Europe, specifically at the time I thought just England, to come here to escape the taxation, or to at least have less taxation. And that was part of it. But John reminded me that it's without representation. They didn't mind necessarily taxation and knew there's a need for some of it, but they want to be represented. And where I got that from for the Gen Xers is Schoolhouse Rock. How many of you, if you're listening to this, definitely put this in the comments somewhere. I'd love to hear if you were a fan growing up watching all the Schoolhouse Rock. They weren't commercials, but they were during the commercial time. And honestly, it helped cement what we were learning in school. It was a cartoon, for those of you that not Gen X, a cartoon. And honestly, we just watched it before we came on. And super intelligent writers and illustrators of that cartoon, really good. But they didn't talk about religious persecution in there. So I think maybe that's why my brain was not remembering that, even though I know from school. So anyway, just kind of funny. We'd love to hear your feedback if you're a Schoolhouse Rock. And you know what? Real quick before we dive in for some other fun, I'll tell you the name of the episode if you want to Google it and watch it. It's called No More Kings. But also, if you type in Schoolhouse Rock with anywhere Mayflower in the search, you'll find it. So No More King, sorry, not plural.
Yeah.
Funny. Okay, so John, I know we're dying to dive into this content on the Pilgrims and their their lives here in the beginning. So I'm going to ask you, were they entrepreneurs? Let's just start out with that. Were they entrepreneurs?
Yeah, right. They were businessmen and businesswomen from that were English, and they had moved. England had kind of run out most of their entrepreneurs, so to speak. So a lot of them had moved to Holland because the laws in Holland were very accepting of the English coming over and running their businesses there. But many of them felt that they were going to lose the English language and the English cultures to the Dutch language and the Dutch cultures. So they were really interested in moving to the New World, which, as you know, they weren't the first. The Mayflower wasn't the first of the settlers that came over to the New World. The Spanish and the French had already, I think, landed here 100 years before the Pilgrims did.
Yeah.
So they were looking to escape so many different things, but one of it was They wanted their economic freedom, and they wanted to preserve the English language and their English culture.
That is so interesting because I don't remember learning that in school.
Yeah.
Maybe I did, but as we were doing the research,
And I don't honestly think that the early settlers wanted. They didn't. It wasn't like they wanted to be um, apart from England so much. They didn't want to sever everything with English. Like, they loved the language. They loved their culture. They just needed some land and able to operate their businesses. Well, I think they were in a lot of fabric businesses.
Right.
Anyways, they wanted to operate their businesses with more freedom. And it was finally when the English government pushed it too far, and the English king pushed it too far with the taxation without representation, just taking their money from them, that the American Revolution finally came about.
Yeah, exactly. And so also, when they first came here, I know we were reading that they were farmers, most of them too, outside of the fur trade, right? Were they also discovering that beaver, right? We read about that too. Beaver.
Yeah, some of the biggest, I guess, fur was a huge industry for the New World, because the English women wanted to wear beaver hats. So they needed the fur, and they were able to trade the fur for other supplies for the settlers here in the New World.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then lumber, the forest. There was so much forest especially over on the eastern half of the U.S. There's a lot of forests, and the English had already pretty much clear cut their entire land. And from what I was reading, that the only pine that could be found to build was up in Scotland. And even that was being depleted pretty quickly.
Yeah. Kind of sad if you think about it.
Yeah.
Really, really sad. And, tell me about you were kind of chatting before they kind of really privatized, if you will, the land over here. At first, they split it up, didn't they? And it was kind of communal, right?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. And then I'm going to put my specs on here because I want to get this.
I'm going to have some coffee.
Because this is written by Dr. Paul Adams, who's a professor emeritus business and a historian. So basically, what he was writing was that when they first arrived here in the United States in 1620, they arrived. I think it was November of 1620, and they weren't prepared for the really harsh winter. And more than half of the settlers died that first winter. So what was left they wanted to fight and continue living here. So they didn't run and turn tail and go back to England. So they started farming. And luckily for them, the Indians that were already here were already good farmers, and especially farmers of corn. So they taught them how to farm corn and plant corn. Well, they did so. And what they decided they were going to do was do kind of a Karl Marx rendition of their colony. So they built these communal farms, and so there was no private ownership of any of it, and everyone had to take their turn in the field to work the farm and work the fields, and they would all share in the harvest. Well, it didn't work out so well, because what they were finding, and this is from what Dr. Adams was writing, they organized the first collective farm. Land was held in common, and all land tilled for crops was owned by all and farmed by the collective efforts of the community. As they were building a religious community, free enterprise and self-interest were secondary to the interest of the group or state. But they found that wasn't working. The collective cornfields suffered from a meager crop year after year. The men of the community worked in the fields out of necessity, but with little enthusiasm. Isn't that true, though? If you don't actually own something, there's no pride of ownership.
We talk about that a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a common excuse to be away, hunting, fishing, or building a dwelling. The foundations of capitalism, with its rights of ownership and the powerful motivating force of economic incentive, did not exist. The Hebrew work ethic, one of the building blocks of the Protestant Reformation, disappeared when it came to working in common in the cornfields. All this changed the day entrepreneurship was born on New England soil. The ruling elders, after a debate over the usual lack of cornmeal for winter storage and the lack of interest in working the fields. How could you not be interested in working the fields when you're already lacking?
Right. You're starving.
Wouldn't
some
you
of
want
them
to work harder?
Yeah.
Anyways.
I don't get it.
But the lack of cornmeal and the lack of interest in working in the fields relented to the idea of privatization. Out of disgust, it was suggested that land be divided and each family raise its own corn. Thus, the lazy pilgrims would go hungry and it would be their own fault.
Wow. Well, we kind of talk about that a lot. You don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah. And that reminds me of when we were in Africa. We were driving, our guide was driving us from the airport to where we were staying, and it was in Nairobi.
Right.
And I remember we saw lining the highways just hundreds of people, hundreds of locals, entire families. And there were little shacks set up selling everything you could think of, every kind of sustenance, everything. And we were asking the guide, do they not have markets? Do they not have anywhere centralized where they go? And he said, no, these people have to sell whatever they can make, whatever they can produce on their farm. Otherwise, they'll die. That's it. He said, there is no such thing as welfare in this country. If you want to live, you need to provide, you need to earn something that you can either trade or earn it in money. And that was interesting because that was the first time we had ever seen that, something like that, where it's like either you do or your entire family will just die.
Right. And we respected that. Yeah.
And they worked hard. I mean, everybody worked hard.
And we bought so many fun trinkets and things because we wanted to support them, because that's how we believe deep down.
Yeah.
You know?
And what was interesting was never once did we encounter someone with their hand out just asking or begging for just money for nothing. When they asked us for money, it was always they were going to give us something that they had made with their hands. They had made a necklace. They had made a bracelet. They had made something, carved something out of wood. There was something of value that we were trading our money for as tourists.
Yeah.
You come to the United States here and you walk down any major city, and you'll be accosted by hundreds of people that just have their hand out, just begging for money. You can't even exit the freeway in your car without people at the bottom of the off-ramp asking for money. And we never saw that in Africa.
Yeah, not at all.
Okay, so anyways, let's get back to this thing. Lazy pilgrims go hungry, and it would be their own fault. But the ambitious would eat. The idea met with opposition as it was felt to be a harsh and selfish measure, not Christian in its approach to sharing and the group welfare. Luckily, the opposition lost, and private ownership of the factors of produce became a reality. And they said, you know what happened? Corn production soared. Within 2 years, they had a surplus and began trading it with the Indians and other small settlements for furs to export to England in exchange for supplies. Corn became the currency. The whole family worked in their own patch of New England soil to better their lives. They were America's first entrepreneurs.
Love it. Love it.
And that, I think those same principles hold true today. I think if we keep giving everything away and provide things for free to families and people, that they're just not going to find anything within themselves to work.
Yeah. And, there is a time and a need for some people that fall on hard times. Like, we're not totally against some help, but this staying on it forever when you can do other things, especially this day and age from home, you can do and make things from home if you can
find something
to work for. Yeah.
And the whole idea of welfare, that should be temporary. It shouldn't be a permanent welfare. It's like our politicians. Our politicians should be temporary. They should have term limits. They shouldn't have an entire lifetime career in politics.
Yeah, we 100% agree. That's our philosophy, and we're sticking to it.
Joe Rogan here in a moment.
I know, right? Yeah. So that was super interesting to learn. And you know what else? As we're digging around, I think over the years, I've forgotten that we weren't the first civilization here. Yes, I know Indians were here for sure, but there were settlers that came that we were chatting about before the colonists. So tell us about that.
Well, the Indians, I think, were here for like 10,000 years.
Yeah.
They predated any Europeans coming over here. And, and of course, like typical, right? The Europeans came over here and just wanted to take everything from everyone. But anyways, I think the Spanish and the French were some of the first Europeans to try and set up colonies here or set up settlements here.
Yeah. Yeah. But we did it. We did it with our.
Yeah, we did it. I think, and this I could be totally wrong on, but we did it with the Revolutionary War. Finally, when we drove back the redcoats and drove England out of the New World, then we became and then we formed our own government.
Right. Exactly.
And then we took from the Indians.
I know.
Right.
Sorry, Indians. I know. But I do feel like we've made strides to really, in a sense, pay them back. I'm sure.
I don't know how you can.
I know. Yeah.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's all. Yeah. That's definitely another episode. But also we found some really great quotes from successful people that talk about the entrepreneurship here in the United States and as it relates to the Pilgrims. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to read those quotes. I was going to read Buzz Aldrin because I have that connection.
You go ahead,
Okay.
Buzz there.
I don't know. On a previous episode, we really quickly talked about the fact that my parents and I, when I was really itty bitty, like 0 to 4 years old, were neighbors of Buzz Aldrin. Yes, the very famous astronaut. We lived in Texas in an area, kind of a subdivision of this community. And who knew it was all astronauts? And so I have an affinity for anything that has to do with the men that walked on the moon. So anyway, Buzz Aldrin says the Pilgrims on the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock. To my knowledge, they didn't wait around for a return ship to Europe. You settle someplace with a purpose. If you don't want to do that, stay home. That sounds like something an astronaut would say. You avoid an awful lot of risks by not venturing outward. Ooh. Before we move on to the next quote, that's huge because that's what entrepreneurship is all about, taking risks. It's not for the faint of heart, right, everybody that's listening, or maybe you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Taking risks is a good thing. You're never going to find out if you could do it. You're never going to find out if all the dreams you plan to make come true can happen if you don't take that risk. So you might as well stay home. I love that.
Yeah. Think about it. If there were no risks, there would be no reward.
Yeah.
Right? Because the other thing too is everyone would do it and there would be no opportunity.
Right.
The opportunity is there because so few people take the opportunity, because so few people are willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
And if you're a person that's willing to take a risk and willing to put in some hard work, the opportunity is there and you will prosper from it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
So the next one that I wanted to read here was, this is from Dr. Paul Jehle, Jehle. So I don't want to mispronounce his name. Sorry, Paul. And he says, in modern terminology, within the first century of our nation's existence, the Pilgrims, followed by the Puritans, experimented with the forced common ownership of property, price controls, and minimum wage laws. The result was a documented dismal failure of such practices. And he means all of them: common ownership of property, price controls, and minimum wage laws. He goes on to say the Pilgrims and their larger Puritan neighbors discovered by experience that the free market taught in the scriptures was the best system, only to have it threatened again by the mercantile trade laws of George III, beginning in 1760, the result of which was our war for independence, which we kind of talked about a little bit. Because he pushed it too far.
I really love that. Let's spend some time on that. You can get in an argument with different friends, but you know what? What's wrong with a healthy argument, right? About wages and minimum wage and all of that. But there's something to be said about that.
Yep.
That some of the things he just was quoted about can fail miserably, right? And yeah,
and if you think about what's happened in California with Gavin Newsom continuing to raise the minimum wage in California, and it's had some unintended consequences, I think. Or maybe he knew that was going to happen and didn't really care, because he nor any of his family are probably on minimum wage. So it doesn't really matter if those jobs dry up or if their hours get cut, but that's what's happened. The recent go around with the minimum wage increase for fast food workers to $20, it sounded great for fast food workers and they were really welcoming it. And I've talked to many who work in that industry and they said it was the worst thing that could have happened, because their hours got drastically cut. Some of them got laid off, and there are no job openings pretty much in that segment, because these fast food companies just won't pay that money. And it's not, I don't know, it's not that they're making profit, because I know McDonald's makes a massive amount of profit, and so do most all of the other ones. but they don't want to give up that profit. So they end up passing it on to the consumer, or they just cut the hours or lay off their minimum wage workforce, which isn't fair for the people who are working those minimum wage jobs either. So like I said, I don't think Newsom cares because he's not making minimum wage, and neither is anybody in his family. So I don't think it really matters to him.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's definitely been tough. Yeah. And it's kind of proving. And what about price controls too? That's never been a good thing. And yet so many people believe in it, yet it's never been a good thing at all. That's why privatization is so important. And, having healthy
and
competition.
less government, just a free market. And I remember back in the day when you went to, I'll use McDonald's again for an example, because they're everywhere. And you walk into a McDonald's and there were more employees in that McDonald's than customers. The behind the counter
that is
was
so true.
Packed, and they were all working hard, rushing around, taking orders, filling orders, running back and forth to the drive-through window. Go into a McDonald's today, and it's barren back there. There's 3 or 4 people back there. Out front, it's just a bunch of self-service kiosks. And it was not this last go around of minimum wage for fast food workers, but the one before that pushed McDonald's and some of these other fast food companies into exploring laying off hundreds of workers and replacing them with machines, with kiosks that you order from.
Right.
And it's a shame again, right? Because now you're taking all these people that had jobs, and now they don't have them, and they're not going to get them because you're not going to take those kiosks out and replace them with human labor again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really sad. And I think for me, it's always been my philosophy that having a job at McDonald's outside of the upper level management, that, you could definitely make a living on. But, these jobs were meant for teenagers. It wasn't meant for you to have 4 and 5 kids and be the sole provider working at McDonald's, in the hourly positions. That's not the type of job it was meant for. And it's really just a shame that they're just hurting that whole.
Yeah, it was always my idea that those fast food jobs at a McDonald's, at these fast food places, all that, these minimum wage jobs were for like high school kids,
right,
to go and work and to learn to work hard, and maybe sometimes to learn that they don't want to work for someone else. Maybe they want to have their own business. Maybe that's the best thing for them, is to work hard and scrub floors and clean the toilets and pick up cigarette butts in the parking lot back when people were smoking cigarettes.
Right.
Doing all those hard work, that hard labor sets them up for their future, because then when they do have other jobs that were paying more than minimum wage, they know they have to work hard.
Yeah.
They don't, like when you worked, there was never a time where you could just sit idle. If there wasn't anything to do, you're cleaning something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've talked about that a lot with you, not on the podcast, but I worked at a a fast food salad place.
Way ahead of its time.
Yeah. Really way ahead of its time. In the 80s, I was 15 and a half, got my permit because I wanted my own money. And I was telling John that there, you did not stand around. It was the best training ground for me for life, for entrepreneurship, exactly what you're saying, because the owner of the place was like, "What are you doing?" Not just to me, but to everybody. "Wipe that down. I don't want to see anybody standing. You're mopping, you're cleaning, you're wiping, you're asking customers if they need anything else." It was the best. And so really drives me crazy. It's like nails on a chalkboard when I see employees at different places standing around, not being productive. It kills me. But
I remember my first job, I was like same thing. You get your work permit at 15 and a half or whatever it was. And it was at a Chinese restaurant, bussing tables.
Yeah.
And there were 3 owners. All 3 were Chinese guys. Boy.
And your mom was Japanese. Your mom worked there too.
Yeah,
the little Japanese lady.
I'll tell you, there was a silent owner, thank goodness. So we didn't have to see him. I saw him maybe once or twice is all. And then the other 2, one was front of house, one took care of back of house. One of them was super cool, nice guy. Unfortunately, that's not the one I really dealt with most of the time. The one I dealt with was the other one at the front of house, because I was at front of house bussing tables. And my goodness, what a nightmare. And that actually taught me a lesson. It not only taught me that, yeah, I have to work hard or I'm going to get yelled at by this Chinese guy in broken English, but, and not, there's anything wrong with that. It was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But the other thing it taught me was that I don't want to work for another man. I don't want to work for someone else like that. I want to have my own thing. And that's why I started my own business when I was in high school out of my mom and dad's garage, because I thought, hey, this maybe something to do here.
Yeah.
But I remember, like you're saying, there was no idle time. If there was nothing to do, then I was supposed to go into the back and help the dishwasher, which there was nothing fun about that.
Right.
It was steamy and hot, and it was a disaster.
That's funny you bring the dishwasher up, because at that, I think it was called Salads Plus. Anyway, one time I was sent to do the dishes, and they had the big machine, and I was moving quickly because I didn't want to get yelled at. And I turned with a glass in my hand and hit the dishwasher arm, and it cut my hand. And so the owner had to race me to the hospital. But, it's part of it. And I still kind of talk about that.
Yeah. But, and I knew it back then when I was working. I'm sure you did too, that this wasn't a forever job.
Right.
This wasn't a career. I'm not going to be a career busboy. You weren't going to be a career. What did they call you?
I don't even know what we were
salad
called.
person?
Yeah.
Okay. Career salad person. And in no way would I ever consider raising a family on the income as a busboy or a career salad person.
No.
I knew that was just a stepping stone, and there would be something else. So I don't know why they have to feel that if you're working in fast food, that if you're mopping the floor, that you need to earn a wage that is sustainable for an entire family, that you need to earn 40 to 50,000 a year. I don't get that.
It's just not, that's not what it was meant to be. That's not the kind of job.
There are lots of jobs where you can make that kind of money and should make that kind of money.
Right.
There's probably a lot of jobs that you can make that kind of money without all of the hard work of having to mop and clean and do all those things that you have to do at a fast food restaurant.
Right. And you could have a side business like we've talked about many times, too. So it's crazy that we keep, in our opinion, raising minimum wage to a ridiculous amount that it's hurting the entrepreneurs who are providing the jobs. That's the last thing you want to do, guys. You don't want to hurt the entrepreneurs that are trying to provide jobs for the community. It just, that's
I think it's people are understanding that, because in this past election, I don't want to get we've talked too much about this stuff. But in the past election, I think even in California, surprisingly, that it was they had another minimum wage proposition on there, and it was soundly defeated. So I think even
people are starting to get wise. Yeah.
I think people are figuring it out.
They're starting to educate themselves on what it does to the economy. Yeah, for sure. All right. Should we read another one? There were a couple other good quotes on here, and I think my page dropped to the floor.
Yeah. Okay. So this one is from the Hoover Institution DC Programs Director, Michael Frank, who explains the Pilgrims' embrace of the free markets, and he says, quote, "Recalling the story of the Pilgrims is a Thanksgiving tradition. But do you know the real story behind their triumph over hunger and poverty at Plymouth Colony nearly four centuries ago," which actually is now more than 4 centuries ago? "Their salvation stemmed not only so much from the charitable gestures of local Indians, but from their courageous decision to embrace the free market principle of private property ownership." And that was a century and a half before Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations.
I love that. Private property ownership. Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Go ahead.
Here's a piece of trivia. Did you know that there was another ship that was accompanying the Mayflower when it left England to come to... And actually, they weren't actually trying to make it. They weren't actually going to what we consider Massachusetts or Cape Cod, or where they landed in Plymouth, which is in Cape Cod, Plymouth Harbor. They were actually headed for Virginia.
You know what? I didn't read that part and didn't remember. I did know there was another boat with the Mayflower, and I can't remember. So you're going to have to tell us.
So the other one was called the Speedwell.
Oh.
And that was proven to be unseaworthy. So Speedwell had to turn around and head back to England with several of the other settlers on board that ship. So that was unfortunate for them, because they didn't become part of the...
It didn't really speed well, did it?
Yeah, well, it was a good thing, because he may have died on the journey, because the Mayflower hit some really bad weather, which is why they diverted to Massachusetts instead of landing in Virginia, which is the plan. They wanted to colonize in Virginia, but they had rough seas and storms. So you can imagine, and that voyage took 65 days. So over
Wow.
2 months on that ship, crossing the Atlantic, you know, getting through all the storms. And then right at the very end of the voyage, it wasn't as though it was sunny and pleasant
Yeah.
and rainbows. It was rough seas and storms, which forced them to land somewhere where they didn't want to land, somewhere where they weren't planning to land, and then having to start there. So these people are really resilient.
Wow. Are they ever?
And then have more than half of them die in the first few months.
Yeah, that's so sad. So
And they still stayed and still farmed and still made it work.
yeah,
Right.
kind of survival of the fittest, if you will.
Yeah,
Think about it.
I kind of wonder what our country would look like if they didn't.
If they didn't survive.
Yeah, if they gave up.
Yeah.
If they said, "Hey, I ran into some problems, we're going back."
Right.
Right, which is what happens with most people who start their own business.
Right.
First time they run into some struggles, some issues, the first time they run into a hurdle, instead of jumping over that hurdle or running through it, they just turn around and say, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, how sad is that? That's a really good analogy for all of this. Yeah. And I'm thinking we've given you a couple fun tidbits to share at the family dinner table today about Speedwell. That would be the perfect one. Hey, did you guys know that there was another ship? Yeah. Amazing. And the fact that it was 404 years ago. That's just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, you think how young our country is.
Yeah.
We're 250 years old, 200, whatever.
A little more than that, right? Yeah.
Right. Shows we're getting old.
I know.
Because
crazy.
I remember the bicentennial.
I know, right? Me too. I was really little. Another fun factoid, not that anybody cares, but I was born in Massachusetts. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I bet you no one at your table tonight is going to know that one.
Yeah, because they don't know who I am. I'm sure. And they don't, even if you did, you don't really care. But yeah, so this has been fun, a whole lot of fun being with you all. We really wanted to kind of bring something different to the table today about our country and how we should all be grateful and thankful for living in America. If you're listening somewhere else on the planet, hello. But we really focused on America and how our country was founded really on entrepreneurship,
right,
and escaping taxation without representation and all that comes with that, right? So definitely every time there's an election, vote, educate yourself first on everything, and please vote. But we were excited to have brought that to you today. We hope you give your friends and family an extra hug today as you're with them all. And wanted to alert you to next week, December 5th is going to be our 11th episode. This is number 10. Hey, high five. We don't high five anymore. Okay, what do we do?
I don't do any of this.
You don't do that either.
No, I don't do that either.
This would be better. Hey, can we do that?
No, we cannot do. We're definitely not doing that.
Hey, he left me hanging.
Right, I'm not doing
he's not doing it. Okay,
the jazz fingers.
We're celebrating our 10th episode, guys, today. Pretty good. I'm proud of us every week. If you've been listening, you've been with us every week. So we're so excited. And please share this with a friend. But join us next week, December 5th. We are going to do some giveaways all through December. So December 5th, we're going to have some giveaways. You got to listen in and comment and to maybe win something December 12th and December 19th. So all 3 Thursdays before Christmas in December, we're doing some giveaways. So look forward to having you back on the podcast. Please share this with somebody that you might find that they might find it interesting or interested in entrepreneurship, and follow us, subscribe, give us a like, leave a comment for us. We love that. So happy Thanksgiving, sending you all the blessings. Have a great day.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks for joining us on Dig the Well.
We hope you feel empowered and ready to take on new challenges.
Remember, if we can do it, so can you. Keep learning, keep believing, and going after your dreams.
And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs a little inspiration or maybe a nudge in the right direction.
Help us grow this community of go-getters. Together, we can achieve greatness and get back to family.
Thanks for listening, and let's keep digging the well.